If you ask around the Battlefield community, the opinions on Battlefield 5 are vastly different. Some say it's the best Battlefield they've ever played, others say it's the worst game in franchise history. I've never seen the Battlefield community so divided about a single title. But why is that? I wanna take a look at what Battlefield 5 did good and what it didn't, as well as trying to find an explanation as to why the opinions differ so much. While preparing my list of pros and cons for this video, I realized that I found more positives than negatives. This came as a surprise to me, as I'm on the side who thinks this is the worst Battlefield yet. However, the negatives far outweigh the pros for me personally, and that is why I barely spent any time playing this game. But we'll talk about that later. Let's start with the good stuff. One thing that immediately comes to mind is the gunplay. I've played a lot of, and almost exclusively, Battlefield 4 since Battlefield 5 was released. Yet, every time I give Battlefield 5 another try, I can't help but notice how smooth the gunplay is. Each weapon has its own characteristics and feels unique and different. Yet, they're all equally useful in their own situation. One of the biggest differences I notice is that in Battlefield 4 I often feel like my bullets aren't hitting where I aim. I can't quite put my finger on why that is. I don't know whether it's the connection, the suppression or the bullet deviation. I don't have these issues in Battlefield 5. If my aim is right, the bullets hit. This alone almost makes me want to play Battlefield 5 more often. The movement is just as smooth in Battlefield 5. It's fluid and direct. You rarely have trouble jumping over walls or obstacles. The animations are quite fast in general too. The only negative thing in that regard is the animation it takes to enter and exit vehicles. We've had them in Battlefield 1 already. Sure, it adds to the immersion, but getting killed while trying to enter a tank is frustrating. I prefer the less immersive insta-plop into your seat. Another big positive is the atmosphere, especially in Breakthrough and other action-intensive game modes. Most of the time I feel like I'm actually in the middle of a war. Everything explodes, bullets whiz past your head, soldiers are screaming all around, and planes deliver an eerie sound when flying over your head. It offers one only in Battlefield moment after another. I also don't want to forget about the little things. One of the best changes was the introduction of the squad revive, which lets you revive squad mates even if you're not a medic. This greatly encourages team and squad play. It's also well balanced, as it takes a lot longer to pick someone up if you're not a medic, so you can't just revive everybody in an open field. Other additions I really like are the ability to pick up medpacks and ammunition at certain points on the map. This eliminates having to wait for a medic or a support to drop what you need. Every Battlefield player knows what it feels like if you desperately need some ammo but can't get a single support to drop you a crate. I'm still unsure what to think of the fortifications. Sometimes they are really helpful, other times they are more of a pain in the ass than any help at all. I'm sure I've missed other positives because of how little I actually played this game. So let's talk about why I've only amassed 25 hours of playtime so far. The first and biggest negative point is the map design. In my opinion, Battlefield 5 offers the worst map selection out of all Battlefields out there. At least it did when it first released. The only decent one that comes to mind is Arras, and even that doesn't find a place in my top 10 Battlefield maps of all time. All other maps are heavily flawed. From the claustrophobic urban maps like Rotterdam and Devastation, where every fight seems to happen in close, chaotic space, to wide open, yet still chaotic maps like Fiel or Hamada. I always felt like most maps force you to run through an open field, where you're visible to anyone looking in your direction, just to force you into a tiny space with barely any cover at all, where every pilot has an easy time bombing you off the map. This resulted in me almost exclusively playing Recon in Battlefield 5, as every time I picked up something else, I felt that I was better off if I had a sniper right now. Maps are purely personal preference, of course. I just never really got used to any of them. It also doesn't help that Battlefield 5 generally has pretty bad visibility. Another negative point I'd like to mention. More often than not, opponents completely blend in with the environment. Just like it should be if they're wearing the right camouflage, right? This just shouldn't be a thing in a game like Battlefield, in my opinion. A game like Battlefield profits from better visibility. It offers an all-around better and less frustrating experience. It also gives players less opportunity to camp or hide and play the objective instead. This is apparent on all maps Battlefield 5 has to offer, but especially on the ones I mentioned earlier. On Rotterdam and Devastation, opponents can hide in all kinds of windows, trains, ruins and ditches where you can barely see them. On Fiel or Hamada, snipers can lay down on top and behind rocks and be barely visible at all. In general, every time I play Battlefield 5, I feel like I'm running around like a headless chicken. I have no idea where to go or how to approach an objective. It's like I have no overview of the battle at all. I also don't want to forget the minor details on the negative side. The main menu is an absolute disaster. It's confusing and packed with unnecessary information. So is the class creator. Building a new loadout is a nightmare, having to click through several unnecessary menus in order to get to the attachments and specializations of each weapon. I wish DICE would just go back to Battle Log for Battlefield 6. It's a much nicer experience all around. The last thing I want to mention on the negative side is a personal issue I have with the game. I know that there are many other players with the same problems, but it doesn't affect everyone. It's the frame skips and frame freezes. I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying they happen constantly. You can see it in some of the gameplay in the background. No, this isn't a render or editing issue. This is how it looks like when I'm playing the game. At times, it's outright unplayable. I'm running the game on an RTX 2080 Ti with an i9 9900K. I'm getting a solid over 100 FPS the whole time, apart from the frame freezes. I've tried many solutions in order to fix this problem, but I have yet to find one that works. There are some other points I'd like to talk about that I didn't feel comfortable putting on either side of the spectrum. For one, I'd like to talk about the game modes Pacific War and Breakthrough. I must admit that Pacific War can be a lot of fun at times. It also brought some good maps to an otherwise dire map pool. I'm in absolute awe of the atmosphere in Pacific War. Pushing or getting pushed through maps like Iwo Jima and Wake Island is a phenomenal experience. One that I probably should have enjoyed a little more instead of spending my time on Battlefield 4. Breakthrough was also kind of a lifesaver for me personally. The main reason I didn't enjoy Battlefield 5 as much as I should have was the lack of rush. I'm a rush player through and through, and Conquest gets boring for me after a few rounds. I still wish we had proper rush in the game, and I desperately hope it will make a comeback in Battlefield 6, but Breakthrough will do for now. A mild annoyance I'd like to mention are the amount of explosives in Battlefield 5. From grenades, to artillery, to the bombers, all the way down to the JB2 rockets. It's just too much. I've played rounds where I spent more time with a shaken screen in front of me than I did without one. I've also had rounds where I seemingly only got killed by planes bombing our only route to the objective. Hello again, bad map design. All in all, I generally dislike Battlefield 5. It has a few positives and I'm hoping to see some of them return in Battlefield 6. But the lack of rush and the bad map design are what ruined the experience for me. It just doesn't quite feel like a Battlefield to me. And that is also why I think the opinions about this game differ so much. It's a decent, accessible game for anyone who likes to play first-person shooters. But for most of the Battlefield veterans like myself, it just doesn't feel quite right. Did I forget something? Are there any things that you particularly like or dislike about Battlefield 5? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.